Hello and welcome to, well, the finale, sort of Analysing Avatar. We're splitting it in two. So this week we are sitting down to discuss the Phoenix King and the Old Masters. And I'm sat, of course, as always, with Chris Billingham. The last Airbender, the late Airbender himself. Woo. Give it up for Chris, everyone. I've ruined my intro, but it's fine.
Thank you very much. What's the plan? Put this up 2 weeks later, put the other one up, or what are we thinking?
I don't know. I'm gonna try and do it so we can align. I'm gonna cheat and use the. I'm either gonna just put them up one after the other, 1 week after the other, like normal, and then just use the extra time to like give us a couple of weeks grace before Rewind Review starts, so we have a bit of leeway.
Yeah, fair enough.
There's also the chance I might like use it to line up the Christmas specials better. I don't know. I've not figured it out yet, but it'll happen. There'll be a thing. And while we're actually very very quickly, Chris, while we're on the subject of the thing, tune in next week. Little tease right here to find out what it is we're doing that might potentially We're going to take a little break from Analysing Avatar, like a slightly longer break than usual. Before we come back and do Korra, which I guess that is for some people news as well. We've hinted at it enough that like we're probably going to do Korra, but we're going to say it's officially that we're doing Korra, but not straight away. We've got something else in between that we're very excited about, and come back next week to hear what that is.
And if you're excited, you should be.
Yeah, it's something. Just we'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be a short run, single run, 11-week sort of podcast thing that I'm excited about. Anyway, Chris.
Yes, Dan.
We're here. How are you feeling?
Finale.
So, oh no, go on.
No, go on. You go.
Well, no, I asked a question and then started speaking. I don't know. It was a dumb thing to do.
No, but I feel like you need to clarify before I start speaking.
Well, I was just going to say, to clarify, you've seen all of the episode. You've seen everything. So
I feel like
you've seen the finale, and while we don't want to get too much into the weeds of next week's episode, just in general, how are we feeling about the Avatar experience?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's an easier question to answer next week after we've discussed, because I think there's one element of the finale that I'm like, am I the only one thinking this? Like, headline, I loved it. I loved it all. I did love it all. There's one element where I'm like, that was a little bit. I'll just use a phrase, and I mean, we could talk about it a little bit here because the character appears in this episode. It's a little Deus-esque lion turtle, isn't it? Just a tad. Is that just me? But
wait, I either misheard that or the line cut out. What did you say? Sorry,
I said it's a little bit Deus Ex Maca lion turtle.
Sure. Yes and no. I sort of see what you're getting at. Well, okay, that is going to be an interesting conversation. Well, there you go, a little tease. I want another tease for next week's episode.
And by the way, I still really love it. Like the whole energy bending thing is stunning, absolutely fantastic. A really unique idea, a really interesting idea, a fantastic way to get around the not violence thing. I guess I just wish it was hinted at, embedded at a little bit more than a lion turtle shows up and tells him. It's a little. I had to watch it back to work out what had happened.
Interesting.
But
that's fair.
That's a bit of a discussion next week, obviously. Which is why I found it difficult which is why I thought it'd be easier to answer the, what are your overall thoughts next week? Because that was a big sort of riding thought when I finished watching it. But it's fantastic. I mean, everyone knows it's fantastic. Like, the special effects are brilliant. There's a lot of comedy, and I think to kind of launch into this week's discussion, which, to clarify, I can't remember I think you did say 2 parts, but part 1 is obviously part 1 and 2, and then part 2 is obviously looking at part 3 and 4.
And this week it's the Phoenix King and the Old Masters that we're reviewing. And if you're worried that it's going to be like a slightly short, but we'll do a bumper episode so we have enough time to cover everything, because I know it is technically 2 episodes length. So we'll make sure that we don't scrimp on the finale. always a worry.
Yeah, yeah, but I think it's the right way to do it in a way, because I think that, like, if we'd have done them as separate parts, I think part 2 would have been very much like, we'd have talked a lot about, the gang trying to, get the scent and the reunion with Iroh and stuff like that. But the Aang stuff would have been like, oh yeah, that was interesting. But, I don't think we'd have talked too in depth about each individual conversation with past lives, because, it's going over some things we've seen before, although with some of them are new. And it's essentially going, look, Aang, kill him. And equally part 3, we really have struggled in this podcast at amazing battles, because we're like, fucking, that was great, wasn't it? The visuals, woohoo! And then sort of don't, find ourselves coming up with 20 different ways to say that sentence. And obviously part 3 is visual spectacular. So I think it's right to chop them in half.
It felt like the right when we were sort of building up to this, and you hadn't seen him yet, and I was kind of thinking just from memory of how the last 4 episodes kind of play out because I wanted you to experience it as a whole, because that's how it aired. It aired as a 4-part like movie almost.
Which is the right way to watch it. It's great.
And I didn't want you to not get that experience, but I also then had to figure out how we review it with that in mind. And when I looked at it, splitting it into 4. It had problems. But doing it in 2 seemed about right, because I think what you essentially have is, in a weird way, Chris, I actually think they could have called the final 2 episodes Sozin's Comet Part 1 and Part 2 and had them as the finale. Because
I'd agree with that.
Because the Phoenix King, the first of these 4 episodes, is last chance to do a little bit of dicking about, which is fine. We'll talk about that in a minute. Which is, it's not only fine, needed. I think it's right. Like it's still Avatar. Still has to feel like Avatar. Last little bit of dicking about, and then we have the tease of we turn the dial up on the ticking clock of the comet. Add more tension. Give Aang more reason to take action immediately, and then he's off on his own adventure. And then the second part, the Old Masters, is setting up the final conflict. Like literally, it almost ends. They might as well end the Old Masters with Iroh like popping up screen, like looking directly at camera, and being like, "Hi everyone, I'm Iroh, and I'm just here to tell you where everyone's going to be going and what they're going to be doing for a little bit." So Aang is obviously about to face off with the Fire Lord. We've sent Sokka, Toph, and Suki off to hamper sort of the Fire Nation forces. Now, Zuko and Katara, they're off to face Azula, and I'm heading with the White Lotus guys to take back Ba Sing Se. So just so everyone knows where we're going, this is our finale set up now. That's what you should expect to see in the next 2 episodes. Thanks. Goodbye, everyone. Good night. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Take care. Like that's like it's not a criticism, because I think that's right, but like the Old Masters is putting the chess pieces in place for the finale. So you could argue quite cleanly, I think, that neither of these are the finale. These 2 episodes, but they do set up the finale really, really well. And I think that they're important parts of that story and that structure. But again, they're not. You could easily have called these the Phoenix King, the Old Masters, and not mentioned the Sozin's Comet, because Sozin's Comet doesn't show up till the end of the Old Masters. So yeah, and then the final 2 really are a 2-parter. Like they're literally, it's one story that just carries through. But these 2 feel separate.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sozin's Comet's mentioned obviously at the beginning in episode 1, but I do agree. I think it's again, we're not saying it's not great. These are 2 great episodes, and I did enjoy that levity and humour, but I was almost surprised when first watching it, because it didn't necessarily feel like, I think because I'm like 4 parts, movie length, epic, I was surprised at how episodic those first 2 parts are, and how kind of classic Avatar fun, especially the first part is. Like, we've got a beach montage in this thing, and I'm like, oh wow, we're starting the finale with a beach montage. That's bold. And I think actually, if you have it as a 2-part finale, and these 2 episodes of moving those chess pieces, I think that would have made more sense in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I don't mind that they turned it into a big epic, like event. And I don't begrudge them that, and I think it works perfectly fine. I do think they're best watched as a 4, but I also think, just structurally speaking, it's pretty. It seems I could be wrong, but it seems to me like the choice to make it a 4-part finale was made later than the conception of these episodes. But that is just sort of me throwing a random theory out there. Yeah. But that takes away from what we were already saying, which is that it does work brilliantly as a finale, as a film, as a thing to end on. And also, I think like the first note I wrote when it does start and it's like the gang are like stressed out, so they decide to have a little beach party or whatever. I think the truest way to start the show's finale is the gang dicking about when they should be working on saving the world, and then Zuko turning up to spoil the fun. Like that's Avatar. That's
yeah. And it felt very. And I almost think they should have been more. Like, I do love that their relationship is at a point where they categorically know that he was just, he hadn't turned. But I think they should have been a little bit more like, fucking hell, has he switched sides again? And I like that they never thought that. But it's so, like, violent and so, like, after him that I think I'd be like, Zuki Poos, I thought you were with us now, baby.
What I thought was great was the soccer gag when the Katara's like, "What's happening?" and he's like, "I made a beautiful thing of Suki, and then Zuko destroyed it."
So good.
Oh, and also he's attacking Aang. Like, it's such a great.
That made me laugh every time because I've watched it. I've watched it all together, and then I this morning watched these 2 episodes, which actually is we had a bit of a. Dad was like, "Oh, you're not ready on time," because I had to set I should have said that's why I wasn't ready as well. I also rewatched the episodes. So I technically had started podcast work earlier than the agreed time of recording. But you
can tell something about what I said really has bothered Chris.
No. I
made a joke. Chris
as I made clear, I thought it was the wrong tone.
Very personally.
I thought it was the wrong tone to start the morning off with, as I made clear. But you do you, Dan. You want to take risks with both the podcast tone and indeed our friendship. You go ahead. No, I'm joking, obviously. All that stuff though, like the building sand momos and sand Sukis was amazing. Like Aang and Toph's like reactions, I really liked. I don't know if they've done it before. I think they have once or twice, but like Aang and Toph's moments, I don't know if it's in the true of shock, and and Katara and Suki's moments of shock when it's not Aang, it's the ensemble players Aang. Like the animation on that, it was almost like it almost felt like I can't remember when this came out, but it almost felt like the creators were going, "What's that? Like Ren and Stimpy's a big thing. That's what cartoons are. Okay, well we'll chuck a bit of Ren and Stimpy in there then, no problem." Like, do you know what I mean? That sort of style, that sort of faces going fully stretched and stuff.
I can't decide if they were doing that as kind of like a nod to like anime tropes, because there's a lot of that going on in like anime and stuff. I'm curious.
I assumed it would be. I assumed the reference would be more highbrow than Ren and Stimpy, but Ren and Stimpy is all I know to reference.
No. I think it's a fair reference. It's like an animation trope, but I'm kind of curious now. Actually, I'm gonna find it. Oh, so that was in the second part, wasn't it? Not the first. 'Cause it's the second part when they're looking for Aang. I pulled up the first part like a dick. Just what am I doing, Chris, with my life?
Oh, that's good though that the trivia is separated into 4 at least.
Yeah, well, the trivia is there wasn't too much trivia, thankfully. Like, it wasn't a crazy amount of trivia.
Right.
I was reasonably pleased, and that isn't in there. So I'm digging it out now.
I think they've been ramping up this notion of, obviously it was the cliffhanger last week, but in general, this notion of how's Aang going to defeat him without killing him. And I like that was a hook for the episode. I like that that was a motif. Oh, another really funny moment. Sorry, we're sort of jumping around a bit. Maybe it's just harder when there's 2 parts. But the Toph's hole everyone else had a moment with Zuko, so I'm going on a life altering trip. And then she's talking about her parents and stuff. The only thing I thought was odd about that choice is they didn't then pay it off, because I'm watching this going, if you have Toph do a bit of a my parents, it's a shame monologue in part 1, have her reunite with them in part 2 and part 4, sorry, even if they're with her at like the ceremony or something, which, unless I missed something, I don't believe they were.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky one, that one, isn't it? Because Toph deserves her independence, and I've always been torn on what you do with Toph at the end of this, and I guess we'll come back to this properly next week, but because we'll go through all the character sort of endings and see what what kind of closure we get for like a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, but I think as much as we need to be careful of not discussing content of next week's episode, I think it's okay if like something is set up here and we feel it's either paid off well or not paid off or something like that.
So I'm a little torn on Toph, because there's on one hand, it does feel like the natural conclusion to show that she's in some way reunited with her parents. But on the other hand, you go, well, wasn't her whole thing about like being free from them, and like you'd have to show them no longer treating her that way for that to be a sufficient ending for me, and that's probably more time than they had. 1 second.
That's fair.
He wants to go out of the room. 1 second.
I think in that case, have her say something else in this episode. Like, right. I agree with that, and I think you can end it and not show her parents, and I think that's okay. I think it would be a little bit of a but I think it would be, sometimes shows end and there's loose threads, but you're okay with them being loose threads. Like and this is kind of more of a production-led thing, but in This Is Us, there's literally characters that were introduced in the finale of season 4, was it? That we're never going to loop back to. We're never going to loop back to that girl who had the horse and the doctor, who I think was Madison's doctor. We're never going to loop back to that, because they couldn't tell those stories because of the filming issues surrounding COVID, and that's fine. That's fine, just being a thread we never really fully go back to. And I think the Toph parents thing, they've had episodes dedicated to her feelings on that, so that's all fine and makes sense.
And didn't we ended an episode recently with her and Katara, her coming to Katara and saying, I want you to help me write a letter to my parents.
Yeah, exactly. So I think not doing anything with the parents is absolutely fine, but in that case, it's a slightly odd decision to make that to dedicate screen time, despite it being very little screen time, of course, and is probably the most obvious go-to for Toph spills her heart out. But I think it felt like, I guess what I'm saying is, it felt like setup when it happens in this episode.
Yeah, I would agree. It's kind of played off as a joke, but it does feel like it's like a joke that'll go somewhere because it's about something personal. Like, but really, I think the intention was, it's just a gag on the fact that every other character has had a moment with Zuko. It's just a play on that. It's a funny joke, and it's great. And Toph gets some good stuff to do in this 4-parter in general, but like particularly, I think in this first part, she gets that whole thing with Zuko, which I think is very funny. And I think she also, the Melon Lord thing is this episode is the first part of this, the Phoenix King. It's when there's a few things I love about this, and I'll break this down in a few different bits. But the element one is, this is a terrible plan. This is a dumb teenager plan that only a dumb teenager would come up with, and I love it because it's so stupid. It's like, we'll just all attack him at the same time. Like, no, that's a terrible, dumb, stupid plan that will never work in reality, right? It's such a childish idea. Like, he's got an army. We'll somehow get close enough to him to enact this. Like, ridiculous. But then, part 2 of the plan that's so stupid is the idea that, like, Toph's going to be the Melon Lord. She's going to stand in a spot and be there, and we're going to get to approach her from, like, you don't know what circumstances in which you're going to approach the Fire Lord. This is such a waste of time. But anyway, so there's part of that which I love, and I think that's great because it just makes so much sense that teenagers, this is the best effort they would have when pushed against pushed up against a deadline like this and no real answers. In many ways, it is an insurmountable problem, the dilemma of the Fire Lord, like for them, because Aang isn't ready. Fire Lord has an army. He's also about to be stronger than he's ever been. Like, and it just, it's that back up against a wall thing of like, what do you do? Well, I guess we all attack him at once. We got to do something, right? But then the way they train for it with Toph playing the Melon Lord is just one of my favorite things. It's so funny, but she gets so into it. And I am the Melon Lord, and she's like throwing fireballs at them. It's like just such a perfect Toph moment, but it's also like super dumb and very funny. And it's all the things I want to be. It's exactly what should happen here. It's so good. It's because you find yourself in a weird situation. Because for those who don't remember the plot, we haven't really recapped the plots of these episodes. The first episode's plot is quite simply that we discover that they've kind of decided Aang won't be ready in time for the comet, and since the Fire Nation have kind of already won, they're just gonna wait and fight the Fire Lord when Aang's a bit more ready after the comet, because what more damage can be done during the comet. And then Zuko kind of explains that no, he's gonna burn like the Earth Kingdom to the ground to sort of show them what for, because they've been resisting. And they're like, oh shit, there is a time frame on this, and they have to panic, sort of figure out a plan to stop him. And then Aang goes missing, and we end with Aang missing on the island and the gang not really knowing where he is and not having much of a plan. And then the second part is Aang having realized in that first episode that he's not sure how he's actually going to deal with the Fire Lord once he meets him, sort of seeking help from his past lives and to figure out whether he can take a life or not. And spoiler alert, they all tell him to fucking kill the dude. And then he ends up getting advice from elsewhere, which we'll come to in a minute. But so that whole Melon Lord scene is just a perfect. Like, that first episode has so much comedy in it. It's great. What a great chance to just like have a laugh before we turn to all the serious stuff. And it does it while setting up all the serious stuff, because the Melon Lord scene ends with Aang going to attack the Melon, not being able to do it. And I can't believe how many times I got to say the sentence Melon Lord just then.
Yeah, I think you, like Toph, like really, really took a shine in saying Melon Lord.
Yeah.
Toph didn't need to keep calling herself the Melon Lord. She could have called herself the Fire Lord, etc. That reminds me of another piece of setup that I feel like was set up that then didn't get explored, which is the bit where Zuko is like, oh, the Father Lord, and she's like, don't you mean Fire Lord? He's like, that's what I said. And I'm like, oh, we're going to get some real, like, them confronting each other scenes that sort of address maybe his conflict of, like, he is the Fire Lord, but he is also his dad and all that stuff. And we get that a bit. I suppose we do get that after he's been defeated, and we do get like them in prison and like when he's powerless. But I don't know. It felt like it felt like we were going to get a bit of Zuko in the battle sort of thing.
Yeah,
with him. But
it's funny because the answer is similar to the Toph answer, isn't it? In that he confronted his father during the eclipse. Like he had that moment of catharsis of saying, it ain't my job to take you out. That's the Avatars, so he'll be coming for you at some point. But I'm gonna make it clear right now, I don't agree with anything you've done. I think you're a shitty person or whatever.
This is weird though, isn't it? Because sorry to interrupt that thread, because I completely agree with that. But also, then the Fire Lord thing almost implies not necessarily affection, but awareness that it is his dad, which then makes it a bit odd.
The Father Lord thing. Yeah, it's like a Freudian slip, isn't it?
Which then makes it a bit weird that he did just spend the first part of the episode basically going, look, you got to fucking kill him. How are we going to kill him?
How are we going to kill dear old dad?
Yeah, so it's like, well, it's a bit weird then that you have that Freudian slip. It's another thing where I think I don't know what it adds being there. So I think it's cleaner if it wasn't. I mean, right. And obviously, again, we're literally talking about one word. Like, we are nitpicking beyond nitpicking here.
Chris, wait a second. Sorry, I didn't pack any snacks. Have we already arrived at Nitpick Corner? Oh, I'm so sorry.
I don't even think we're at Nitpick Corner with that one. We're at like Nitpick Pavement, like
Nitpick Junction.
Yeah, it's so...
Yeah, we can go left or right and we can decide if it's a nitpick or not. So here we are at Nitpick Junction, everyone. Honk honk, here we are. Do we go left or do we go right? I'm going to go with that it's not a fair nitpick because I think while I agree with the observation, I'm going to say that for me, they get away with it on the grounds of you could also argue it exists as a gag. The same with the Toph one. It's a gag that happens to tie into their character, but it could easily be it's just a gag rather than it's set up for something that doesn't then happen. That's where I've landed. Which way are you going on Nitpick Corner, Chris? On Nitpick, sorry, Junction.
Well, I don't think it's particularly funny. So I don't know if I'm not sure about that defense personally because I'm like I don't think it is a gag. Like
it's a proper 1-2 gag, isn't it? There's because someone else says someone says to him it's like the Father Lord, and then they're like, don't you mean the Fire Lord? He goes, that's what I said. The and then isn't there a joke where it's like the Fire Dad or something like that? Isn't there a second play on that, or am I misremembering?
I don't think so, but I could be misremembering. I'm going to go that it is a nitpick because I don't think it implies emotion that makes the let's kill him stuff a bit weird, and either that or it implies some sort of further payoff between them, which I don't think we kind of got because like all their scenes later are not about like they're a bit like, you know, they're more, haha, I defeated you than, you know, Dad, what are you playing at? I will say, I know that's probably for next week, but I don't feel that way about Where's My Mum and the fact that we don't see him reunite with the mum. I love that. I think that's really good that we don't even get the answer to that question. I really like that.
Ooh, interesting. Because that's been a controversial point amongst fans, so I'm very excited to talk to you about that. That's a little tease again. God, we're all teased this week. We're all set up for the payoff. I guess this is the perfect podcast for these 2 episodes. It's all set up for the payoff. There's nothing wrong with it. It's good. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. A successful version of these 2 episodes, not just of this podcast, but of the show Avatar, is one that correctly sets up the finale, and I think they mostly do that. So we'll come back to that in a second. But I've just looked it up.
Oh yeah, I think they definitely do that.
I looked it up just to check. There isn't an extra tag. There's just the Zuko. That's what I just said line, which is delivered in a sort of like sitcom-y way. But yes, I also looked up.
Fair. That's fair.
I also looked up the moment you were referring to earlier when Suki and Katara's faces like drop in that like very over-exaggerated, insane animated way. Yeah, that is very much an anime thing. That specifically, I think that's designed to look like what happens in anime. And for those of you who are wondering if we'll come to the one of the big debates about this show, which is does it count as an anime or not, the answer is no. We will not be discussing that on this podcast. I think Chris will probably quite happily admit he's not equipped to answer that question, and I will quite happily admit that I brought up anime once before on one of these podcasts and had some thoughts on it, and it turns out I don't know anything about anime, and everyone yelled at me, and I don't want to do it again. So we're not doing it. We're not doing that debate.
What do you think to the fact that we're steering clear of that debate?
Yep.
But over the course of like 3 episodes, had a fairly lengthy discussion about the bikinis. What do you think that says about us?
Oh, I'm so annoyed you brought that. Why would you bring that back up? No. Shut it down. I'm shutting it down. I'm not responding to that question.
We're not discussing anime, but we'll debate that back and forth. Don't be ashamed of who you are, Dan. You're a pervert.
So angry about this. I'm so angry about this. I deleted trivia this week about swimsuits.
Oh, what? Was there trivia about Suki's or something?
There was trivia about the fact that they're back in the swimsuits they wore in a previous season. And it's the first time we've seen what Suki's sort of swimwear is. That was the trivia. It's in the Avatar Wiki trivia. Because what I do is I start with the Avatar Wiki trivia, and then I delete as necessary, and then if there's any that I'm unsure of or think need further sourcing or more context, I'll then start researching myself. A lot of the time they don't, thankfully, and sometimes they miss one. In fact, I bring this up right now. Do you remember earlier in this season, Chris, when Iroh had that like female guard that he got on well with, and he asked her not to be there the day of the eclipse? Do you remember that storyline?
Yes.
Yeah. That was voiced by Serena Williams of the Williams sisters.
Oh wow.
She was voiced. I say that was a horrible way to phrase that. I don't know. My brain just died there for me. She was voiced by Serena Williams.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah, right. She was. Yeah, she did it. She did a voice for it.
Please tell me when Suki like first appeared in normal clothes, that was written at trivia. Because I find the idea that someone took the time to go, it's the first time we see her in a swimsuit. It's just really inherently weird.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's my problem. So it comes in the piece of text about the fact that they're the swimsuits from previous seasons. So I guess you could argue the thinking is,
oh, we should clarify Suki's isn't.
Yeah, right, correct. But either way, I deleted that trivia, Chris, because I didn't want to fucking talk about it because I knew you'd do this. And I didn't want to give you any angle.
I'm just saying. I think it says a lot about us that clearly a big discussion in the Avatar fan community, a big subject, a big meaty subject. We're just like, yeah, no, we're not dealing with that. Yeah, yeah. Let's figure
out if Nickelodeon censored these and how much.
We'll get to the heart of the real issues, people. What did you think to take us away from that, Dan?
I've changed my mind. We're not doing Korra. I'm not doing it.
Why are there more bikinis? Are you already thinking about the bikinis? Are you already thinking about the bikinis in Korra? Jesus.
No, I'm thinking about you finding any excuse to talk about them again and somehow make me feel bad about myself for ever having mentioned in any trivia ever. Because it all started so innocently, Chris. It started me simply going, I don't know where the censorship came here. Because did they censor themselves? Because there was a piece of trivia that they were sort of shifted in some way to make them sort of less revealing, and I was curious whether that was just like they were fine and Nickelodeon went over the top, or whether they were bad and Nickelodeon or someone was right to step in. I just idle thought about where the censorship led in that chain of events, and it's led to this, and I need it to stop. I need it to stop.
You know why I don't feel bad about it? Because you make it worse. Like, I was literally twice now I've tried to change the subject, but in trying to justify it, you make it worse.
I know. I can't because it's good because you've made it that every time. I tell you what the worst part about this is that you somehow got out of this.
Here you go again.
Because
you're doing it right now. You're doing it live.
It's you that keeps bringing it back up.
But not then talk about it for 20 minutes. This is all right. You, baby. Right. Listen, Dan, it's the finale next week. Give me I want your ranking of your top 5 bikinis.
It's the finale next week, and it will be the finale because we ain't doing Korra anymore. That's what. Anyway.
Yeah, that tells me there's a lot of bikinis in Korra. Listen, what do you, for the 5th time, what do you think of Surfer Dude Avatar? Because that's my first time seeing him, right?
No, I think I think that whole opening sequence at the beach is like one of my favorite things. Oh wait, when you say Surfer Dude Avatar, what are you referring to exactly? You're talking about the beginning, right? When they're like chilling out on the beach. No,
I'm talking about the past life that was. The one that was like, I go with the flow, and that's
Surfer Dude. Oh, okay, we've gone on to the past lives. Oh, sorry, apologies. Okay, yeah. So in the second episode, Aang convenes.
Yeah, Dan. I can't stress enough, mate. I was taking us away from the beach.
Well, it's just because I couldn't. I was thinking Surfer Dude. I couldn't. Yeah, you were talking about Avatar Kuruk. I didn't remember that's how they framed him. Yes. But yeah, they did. Yes. So he talks to all of his past lives in the Old Masters in an attempt to try and identify what he does, and he goes to Roku, and Roku says he must be decisive because Roku kind of left the problem, and that's how we got to what we are today. Kyoshi tells him he needs to learn that justice can bring peace. And then Kuruk, and obviously that can. And what I love about both of those is that it connects to stories we already knew about both of those avatars. You know, we learned about Kyoshi needing to, separate from the other island, and that guy died, and he died sort of by his own hand. But Kyoshi doesn't see the difference; she does see herself as having murdered that man, but for the benefit of peace, which I thought was really interesting. That was Roku's is obviously based on a story we already got about him. Then we meet Kuruk, who's the first time we've properly interacted with Kuruk, but we'd heard about his story already briefly when Aang met Ko referred to having stolen Kuruk's love's face. So Kuruk talks about learning to be active and not passive and actually help shape the world. Oh no, that was Yang Chen, wasn't it? Sorry, Yang Chen's the one who lost her. Who lost the spirit to Ko? Was it Kuruk or Yang Chen? I can't remember now. That's bad. Either way.
No idea.
One of them did. So Kuruk obviously learning to be active and not passive and help shape the world. And then from Yang Chen, who's Aang's last hope is when he speaks to Yang Chen. He's like, well, Yang Chen was the last air nomad avatar. They'll understand, you know. And Yang Chen's like, yeah, it's real nice that you're super, like, you know, you're on it with your monk stuff. But, you know, you sometimes as the avatar, you've got to sacrifice your own spiritual needs for the sake of the world. So yeah, he learns he needs to be decisive, bring swift justice, be active, and make sacrifices for his own needs for the better of the world from all the avatars, which is not the answer he wants. So he ignores all of that. How did you feel about meeting all these outcasts? Because we've obviously had a lot of interactions with Roku. Roku has been Aang's kind of main guide through the spiritual side of his avatar stuff. How did you feel meeting sort of... We've already had brief interactions with Kyoshi, but getting a more detailed talk with her, where it's just the two of them, plus Yang Chen and Kuruk.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a nice sort of way of... It was a really clean way of... almost kind of going, it's the finale. No, you know, you didn't necessarily have this question. You didn't necessarily, you know, go into this going, I hope we explore past lives a bit more. But we're gonna, and you're gonna enjoy it. So yeah, I liked it.
Do you think it made sense that they all told him the same thing? Because I did kind of think, like, why is Aang so different from his past lives if they were all so united on this front? I'm not saying that's a criticism necessarily, more of an idle thought.
It's difficult because I think for the episode, they need to tell him the same thing. It needs to ramp up. Maybe that doesn't help with my slight Deus Ex Machina feelings, though. Maybe. But so not in the context of the episode, but I suppose if you really think about it, it does pose questions on like why is Aang so different. But in a way, he's not so different because. You know, Roku didn't do that, and he lost, and that's Roku's point. Like, you know, Roku wasn't different. Roku felt the same, and that's what led to him losing in his head.
Right.
So,
and actually,
you know,
they all had, with the exception of Kyoshi, they all had stories of like having lost something
exactly.
like that. Yeah,
they basically. I don't think they are different. They were going, yeah, I did that, and it didn't work out. It slightly goes, you know. Sometimes the spirits and the spirit world is all seeing and sort of knows what's going to happen, and other times it's kind of nice. But then again, I suppose not. Actually, I take that back because one, I don't remember the nuances enough to really say that. But two, this is very much framed as he's talking to his past lives, so this isn't about them knowing what's going to happen or seeing the future. And if he's talking to his past lives, I think it makes sense that in the main, his past lives are going, yep. I was the same and didn't work for me, so if you want my advice, probably don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective on it, actually, because you're right. It's more about. I hadn't really thought about it this way, but it is all more about them, sort of. Well, not all of them, but like a lot of them, like they learned through their mistakes, and they're basically saying, "Hey, look, we learn from our mistakes before making them yourself. You know, you can benefit from the wisdom of our errors instead of having to make them afresh, which is I guess the true power of the Avatar, right? Like having those multiple lives, like, you know, allows you to sort of trial and error. And all of his past lives seem to feel that was the best option. And it's interesting. Do you think if he'd gone far enough back, if he'd kept trying, if he'd just kept going back through the years and through the avatars, he'd have eventually found one that had an answer? Did the lion turtle give him the answer, or was the answer somewhere in there from a past life and he just didn't know it, and the lion turtle helped unlock it? Like, it's. Yeah, I don't know.
I'd have preferred that. I'd have if we'd have had a hint of a previous story with a previous avatar, and there was some uncertainty about how they defeated someone or something, and we'd have had that in a previous episode. I like that idea more because the thing for me is, and this is in this episode, so I think it is fair to talk about it. We can hit on some of this stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
If it was the lion turtle said something cryptic, and then Aang went off mulling it over, and then remembers his words later and energy bends. I have less. I think you have more ability to go. It made Aang think it had lion something, but we literally see the lion tap him, and then there's a flash as if the lion is passing something to him that way, and that's how it plays in the end as well. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah,
I don't think because of that, if we hadn't have had that tap and that flash, yeah, I think you could say the lion unlocks something, or it makes Aang think, or something like that. And I think that's kind of better. And you can still kind of interpret it that way if you want. But the flash, you can also interpret it as literally the answer was put in his head.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That because the line title, you're saying maybe he should say something. He does say something cryptic, really cryptic. Like, I've written it down.
Yeah, but almost too cryptic.
Yeah,
like,
I've read this sentence 1,000 times, Chris. Can you make any sense of this? The true mind can weather all the lies and illusions without being lost. The true heart can tough the poison of hatred without being harmed. Since beginningless time, darkness thrives in the void, but always yields to purifying light. I mean, on a surface, I'm a dummy level, it's sort of talking about their sort of energy struggle that they have in the finale, right? You know, and it's like the Fire Lord's evil thoughts are almost overpowering the Avatar, and then the light finds the way in the end or whatever. It's almost a literal description of that in many ways. But, like, I was watching this episode, and I started writing that down, so I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? What is that?
Yeah. and I really paid attention to that the second time, because first time, so and this is touching on the finale a little bit, but I think we're here and it would be weird to sort of, and also we're not recording these two episodes that close together. So the first time I watch it, and I'm like, right, so he appears to be bending with, like, his powers, and it's like they're bending spirits, and he's bending his spirit, and that's taking away his spirit and therefore power, and like, okay. And the episode finishes, and I look it up to clarify. I'm like, what happened there? And I see the term energy bending, which I'm not sure is used in the episode, but I might be wrong there. And I see the term energy bending, and I'm like, okay, that's what it was. Okay, cool. So watching it back the second time, I'm like, right, I am zeroing in on what this turtle says, because presumably it's because it felt fucking cryptic before, but presumably now I know where it's going. I'm going to hear what the turtle says, and I'm going to go, boom, that's how we got there. It's all good. And the turtle says what he says, and I'm like, okay. Still pretty confusing, and I know where it goes. So, yeah, as it may be clear, Dan, I struggle slightly with that.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because, like, the answer with energy bending, unfortunately, comes in supplemental material. It's the context for what's going on here is later. It's in Korra. And the problem is that's not a sufficient answer at this stage, because this should stand on its own. And we'll have the discussion next week properly about whether it is sort of Deus Ex Machina or not. Like, the idea of someone just he's like, I don't know how to solve this, and the turtle just goes, here's a thing you can do, and he does it. But
yeah, because let me be very clear. The thing he does, I think, is genius. The execution of that thing, the animation, is amazing.
Yeah,
it's the setup. I get that you want to have this plot of how am I going to defeat him without killing him, and you kind of don't want the audience to be guessing. I'd almost understand it more if this was made and released now, because I'd be like, well, in a world where everyone's theorizing on Reddit, etc., like, it's going to get guessed, it's going to get worked out, and that's going to be publicized in a 10 theories about Avatar that are probably true article. Like, but that wasn't so much the case then, and I think the idea is brilliant. I think the execution of the moment is amazing. I think it is a phenomenal, clever answer. I just wish the setup, which is in this episode, I just wish the setup was more than, here you go. And that's how the setup feels.
Yeah. There isn't much of it. We'll come to it more next week to talk about how, like, whether we think it's, because it does sort of encroach on the finale talk. But we'll see if we can figure out next week how we feel about when we see the finale, whether it does count as a Deus Ex or not. We'll give us some time to think on it, because I definitely see where you're coming from. But I'm not sure I felt it on any previous watch or even this viewing. So I need to.
I feel like it's like, because the thing is, it almost feels like it's like, I'm not sure I agree, and I need a bit of time to work out why I don't agree and create an argument. And the trouble with that is that makes me go, well, maybe I need to spend a bit of time thinking over why I feel that way and creating a counter argument, and I won't.
No, that's not what it was at all. It's
okay. Yeah, you're right, Dad.
It's twofold. I've never thought of it, and I can't. There's no immediate reason like that I can think of that it isn't that. But I've never felt that. But I'd like to watch the next two episodes and see how the setup flows through from here to that.
But I think
full disclosure, I ended up just watching the 2 episodes we're doing, so I need to sort of rewatch and that's all it was.
Right.
But also, I'd say as well, we are getting into like the finale stuff, and I'd be nice to keep those separate. But it was more about that than it was me trying to get some time.
Yeah,
to
that's
counter
fair. But I think I guess the reason I'm keen to make the point about the setup now is because I don't want to be misconstrued. That's my biggest issue with it. What happens in the next episode, I actually quite like. Like I say, the animation of it is beautiful, the execution of it is beautiful, the notion of it, the idea behind it is really, really strong. I don't think it was set up well, and that, I guess, that happens this episode. So I don't want to seem like I'm moaning about something next week that actually is more applicable here, because my issue with it is, it feels like the answer, and again, this doesn't ruin the episode for me, I can't stress that enough either, as in the whole finale, the answer is literally given to him by a character we've never met before.
Yeah, okay, that's true. That is true to a certain degree. My only immediate sort of counter in reference to it is that it is given to him ahead of the fight. It's not like he's fighting the Fire Lord, he doesn't know what to do, and then swoops a lion turtle who brings that power to him. He goes on a quest here to get a solution, and the universe provides him one. It's the purpose, the goal of the plot of these 2 episodes is Aang seeking an answer to the question of how else can I do that. So would you feel differently, Chris, if the problem was the world was going to explode, and the protagonist spends 2 episodes searching for an answer to that, finds one, and then there's a 2-episode finale where he enacts that plan? Would that feel like Deus Ex Machina to you?
I think the question's even cleaner than that. I'd probably feel differently if it was a 2-part finale and these 2 were set-up episodes. Because then what you're describing is absolutely bulletproof. He gets the answer 4 episodes before the finale, or kind of 3 episodes before the finale, if you view it as a 2-parter. And then we spend a couple of weeks going, what the fuck did that mean? Trying to decode what the turtle said, trying to work it out, having a bit of discussion, and thinking about what that could mean. And then we go into a 2-part finale where it happens. I honestly think I would have genuinely, because if you think about it, if they'd have done that, we'd have done these 2 episodes as individual episodes, and we'd have spent what would have been the last episode talking about what that could mean and what it could be. And I do honestly think I would have less of a problem with it, because what you described in a different way was it's not in the finale, it's in an episode before, and I think that would make me feel a bit differently about it. But I watched them all together. Do you know what I mean? I watched them as one thing,
as did the original audience.
Yeah, and as one thing, it felt a little bit like a character we've never met went, "Here's the answer."
Interesting.
So yeah,
answers on a postcard, listeners. I'm curious to what everyone thinks. I think I'm leaning. I do think there's merit to your point. I think you're right to observe that it does kind of come out of nowhere from a source. I think particularly what seems to be irking you, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is not just that he gets the answer sort of handed to him, but is that it comes from a previously unestablished source.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's right. I think that is a fair observation that it just sort of falls out of the sky into his lap. But I would say, by going on his spirit journey and looking for an answer to the solution, rather than going down the easy path of I'll just go murder the dude. He goes looking for that answer. It sort of comes to him, but it comes to him at the end of a quest. It's not like, it's not like they're on the beach. And he goes, I don't want to kill the Philo, but I don't have the solution. And then he trips over a scroll, and he opens the scroll, and he goes, energy bending.
But how much but can you imagine if, because you yourself said, like, not that you felt this way, but I think one of your questions about, us seeing all the avatars, there's a leaning on, is that too long? Do we spend too much time talking to the old guys, or do we like that? Oh, I think you said something about them all saying the same thing. Oh no, your framing was, why is Aang so different? But let's take that as a point. What if he's in a kind of spiritual state? So maybe you can't do the island thing, or it really is just an island that he goes to, and then he goes into the spirit world, whatever. You find a way around the fact that he needs to get separated from the gang. What if he talked to all his past lives, and there was a clue or something in their stories that meant there was another way they could have defeated. Like, do you know what I mean? If they'd have known about this or realized about energy bending, it would have been different from them. And they kind of all give a little hint or a tease, which he then is sort of mulling on. And in that final battle, instead of flashing back to the turtle flashing the information to him, those pieces of the puzzle come together. They all say, they each say, or Ruku says something like, I couldn't change the man from within. That shit, I've thought about it off the cuff on the moment. But something like that, but obviously better. And we have flashes of those moments. And he's like, the thing they didn't do was try and bend their aura, his energy, his spirit. And then he does that. And I just think that I wouldn't have any problem with. It's characters we've met before, it's stories we've told before, framed from a slightly different perspective. So it's still kind of keeping it from the audience, because that element of those stories isn't zeroed in on. And it just, for me, that's pieces of a much bigger puzzle coming together at the end. So to reiterate the original point, I've got less of a problem with it if it's in the penultimate episode and then it's a 2-part finale. I've got even more less of a problem with it if it's the past lives realizing and passing it on subtly, or Aang realizing from hearing something about the thing they've said about what they didn't do makes him realize what he can do and give a go to. How would you have felt if he'd, instead of getting it from his past lives, because I do think there is one slight problem with that, which is just that if they had access to that power and are kind of hinting and guiding him, like, they could have used it. Like, it does feel like he's kind of almost given the power specifically. I prefer the notion that I dropped it, and again, that was all on the fly. But at one point I said something like, they didn't realize and he realizes. I think I think you're right. Yeah. I don't think it should be they realized and are telling him. I think it should be he's suddenly thinking about what they didn't do and goes, oh shit.
Right, but where I was getting to, really, I was just to lead in. But would it have been? Would you have not preferred it? But would it have been better than the lion turtle if he'd maybe gone on gone back into the spirit world directly? Because The other thing as well is, like, if he'd gone into the spirit world, there's plenty of characters we've met in the spirit world, like Ko and that old panda. If he'd have thought, like, I need an answer to this, and I'm not going to get it. I guess it makes more sense that he would go to his past lives before he'd go into the spirit world and start seeking truth. But I don't know, because then we could have at least gotten the answers from characters he'd met before, rather than... Because it also... I think another element of this that I think also makes it... Could make it feel a bit more Deus Ex is that it's not a power... It doesn't seem like it's a power he had all along himself and had to work out how to use. It feels like a power he was gifted.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And I think that's another part of why it might feel a bit like Deus Ex Machina.
Why I think the finding out more about, I assume, energy bending, the lion turtles, what that means, where it comes from, where the idea comes from, maybe. I assume if all of those things are explored in Korra, I think that softens it as well.
They are, but I don't think that's a valid defense here, because I think this should stand on its own.
Yeah, completely.
As if Korra would never, as if you have to review this in the context of as if Korra never existed, because you can't depend on that there'd be another show. Like when they're writing this finale, they don't know they're going to do Korra necessarily. This has to stand on its own. It just has to. So yeah, I think there are definitely issues with it. We've covered a couple of them. The fact that it's a character we've never met before, the fact that it appears to be gifted to him rather than something he discovers in himself, the proximity of it to the finale. They all sort of, I think, all of those elements combined can make this feel like that. Again, it never really was much of an issue for me, and I'll be interested to see, with that in mind, watching through to the next two, how we feel about it.
Yeah, and there's every chance that watching through the next two, I might change my mind slightly on it, because anyway. I've only seen the full thing once, and again, I only watched the first two for this, so possible.
So let's move on to some other stuff, because there's tons of other elements.
Yeah. What did you think of the Zuko Iroh reunion?
Yeah, one of my favorite things. I mean, Zuko in general through these two episodes is incredible. We get the moment in the episode before in the Phoenix King, where the gang have a hug, and he doesn't join initially, and they're like, "Get in here," and then Appa tries to get in too, which is fun. So we have two wonderful Zuko moments. We have him being accepted into the gang in the Phoenix King, and then we have essentially, I think it's somewhere in the trivia this is mentioned as well, but essentially the story of the prodigal son. When he sort of leaves to do his own thing, comes back, thinks he's going to be sort of, thinks the dad's going to be disappointed in his choices and behaviors, and he's actually just like, welcomes him back with open arms, and it's done so well, and it's done with such good pacing. They really build to it. They don't just go, "Oh, we're gonna go see my uncle," and then they go to when they meet the old masters, who we'll come back to in a minute. Actually, that we should talk about the fact that all these characters turn back up. That's how have we not even covered that yet? Because we spent 2 hours talking about Liontail, is what happens. He goes back. He's like, "Where's my uncle? He's not with us. We're going to take you to him." There's the anticipation. You can see that he's very nervous about it. Then he gets there and he doesn't go straight in. And then when he does go in, Iroh's asleep. Like, they really do a slow build to it. And like, I think there's a version of this where someone says that doesn't work for them and that they just wanted to get to it and that it feels like a lot of delaying. I loved that. Because it gave the moment more pathos to me, because I really felt like they kind of built up to it, and it gave it a lot of tension. And then the moment itself, it just the payoff. When Iroh is talking about what should happen to the Fire Nation now. The other thing we need to talk about is Fire Lord Azula. Actually, that's another thing we need to come back to. But we for those who don't remember, Azula is basically made Fire Lord because Fire Lord Ozai decides he's going to be the Phoenix King now, which is the dumbest title ever, and he should be mocked out of existence for that. But anyway, they're sort of talking about what will happen if they do win, and who will lead the Fire Nation. And Iroh says Zuko should lead the Fire Nation because he has unquestionable honor. He says it has to be you, Prince Zuko. He basically says he restored your own honor, and you must now do the same for the Fire Nation. And that's just such a huge moment because it's it not only has it got huge implications for where this might go should they win, and what Zuko's arc is, but it manages to both tie the overarching plot and Zuko's arc up in a bow that I couldn't believe made so much sense. Like this idea that this whole time he was still on his quest to restore his honor, and he's achieved that now. So now he's perfectly positioned to do that for the Fire Nation. That's just genius. And having that come from Iroh, this confirmation of how much Iroh loves Zuko and is so proud of what he's achieved. Oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's so amazing. Good. It's all so good.
Like it's so in character with both of them. And it's kind of like, it's exactly it's one of those really good moments where the show gives you exactly what you expect, but that's what you want, so you love it. Right. You're like, yep, I expected this emotional reunion. No one in the audience is sat there going, yeah, he's going to be mad, he hates him. I bet he gives him what for. Everyone knows where it's going, but that's, it would have been so disappointing if they didn't deliver that. So it's one of those great, low-hanging fruit moments where they're like, boom, here's exactly what you want from this. And it's, it's really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think it's just amazing to sort of like give me such an important character moment alongside and in tandem, weaved so beautifully with a plot point.
Yeah, completely.
With several plot points, to be honest.
And I love the payoff of what the White Lotus is and all that sort of stuff. I think that all loops back around really nicely, and that's a good example of something where it happens, and I'm sure if I was watching this live and I was on forums and whatever every week, the prevailing thing would have been like, oh, maybe we'll see that group. But the way I've watched it, it was like, oh yeah, that makes complete sense. Like, of course we're gonna see the old masters. Like, that makes complete sense. And of course they're going to be those characters. But it's so much. But again, that did not take me by surprise. The idea didn't take me by surprise, but it kind of made me go, oh yeah, of course. And I love that, like that sort of sense of surprise and stuff. I will say as well about the Iroh moment, amazing Katara and Zuko moments where they had their chat, and then obviously there's some great stuff with them in the next episode as well. I do find it funny because always with shows like this, although I suppose not shows, franchises. The only real example I've got to hand at the moment is Take a Shot, Harry Potter. But it always becomes...
It's the finale. Like, there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to talk about Harry Potter, Doctor Who, and you need to say Fire Dude and Uncle Fire Dude at some point. That's all we need, and we've done.
The thing
we're cracking out all the old hits.
The classics, the greatest hits. The thing is, right, like, it just always becomes, and I'm sure there's other examples, but it always becomes if it's especially if it's a female love interest, a male hero, and then a male villain, there always becomes this weird subset of the female love interest and the female hero, and the villain. So in particular, Draco and Hermione is a big thing. A lot of people are like, and there's no evidence. Like there's nothing in the text.
I feel like there's a little bit of retroactive there though, because do you not feel like that a lot of that's come from the recent years' discovery that, like, I think they've said that during filming that Emma Watson has admitted she had a crush on Tom Felton, and I think that has.
I remember seeing like YouTube montages like as a teenager before even like the finale, like the final film was out. People were like, shipping them and stuff. But with this, I feel like the creators play into Zuko and Katara
100%.
Like, we're not a couple, and they look embarrassed, and they have all these sort of tender moments, and they don't like each other, and then they do, and they win each other around. And I'm like, I've thought it. It's not just in this episode that I thought it. I've thought it in the past as well. It's just never come up. But like, they really do play on that. Like, way more than a lot of the other shows or franchises where that relationship has been accused, such as Draco and Hermione.
Yeah, and I think I almost think it's been slightly playful in response to an accident. I mean, because the first time the first time those two characters have like an interaction, it's relatively antagonistic. The second time they have an interaction, it is a softer, more emotional moment. It's the season 2 finale. It's when she goes to use the spirit water to heal Zuko, and he's been on a journey through season 2 where he's in a he's been helping his uncle with the tea shop, and he's been learning about himself, and he's not quite backtracked on that yet, and he looks like he's turning somewhat good now. And there's a moment when Katara sees that in him and is about to heal him with the spirit water, and then it all goes tits up, and then he betrays everyone, his uncle and stuff, and attacks Aang. And that's one of the reasons Katara felt so hurt, obviously, when he joined the group this season. But that first moment, which is often for me, like when I rewatch the show, the point in which I go, they could have been setting that up from here, basically. That one, I think, was an accident. They were going for Katara, the sort of motherly one of the group, sees the good in Zuko. She's the first one to see that good in Zuko and give him a chance from that group. And the reason we do that is because emotionally, when Zuko makes the choice he makes at the end of that episode and strikes Aang, it hurts all the more. Because Katara saw it in him. It was definitely there. We knew it was so close. They wrote those scenes with that in mind as the premise and the thing that you're supposed to take from it. Didn't stop people from seeing it as a romantic thing. No. I sometimes wonder, I'd have to, I'd have to take a time machine to go back and verify this, but I reckon that the real Zuko Katara shipping did not begin until season 2 finale. The really heavy Zuko Katara shipping, and I'm willing to bet that's why there's a scene in the Ember Island Players where the two get all cozy and the crowd are into it. It would not surprise me that the stuff we're seeing now from the Ember Island Players to that moment in this episode is them winking and nudging, and because they saw the reaction to that season 2 finale.
And you know what? It almost works too well.
Yeah,
because
right.
Part of you genuinely does go, it would be quite a good fit.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that moment, but taking the ship out of it, that moment where they're sat outside the tent and she's like, "You've changed. He's gonna forgive you." And also the beauty of him walking in and he's not even awake; he's just asleep, and the affection in Zuki Poo's in Fire Dude.
Woo, he did everyone
in his eyes is beautiful. It's heartwarming.
And I think it's nice as well that the weird shipping stuff aside, I do think it's really nice that it's Katara that, the person who was most stony towards Zuko, the person who was least convinced that he was changed, is the one that says, you need to go in there. Of course, he's gonna, feel that way about you still. She sees it in him so strongly now. She's the first one there in that moment, and that's such that they earned that. Like that's the last few episodes. Zuko's arc for this, the sort of 6 to 8 episodes that preceded this one, was getting us to that moment where Katara can say that. And let's be honest. We can talk all we want about like Zuko's arc and like bringing up his problems with his father and stuff. Like, and is that a completed arc, or is that just like, were they making a joke? Whatever. For me, the Zuko Iroh stuff was what I needed from these episodes, way more. And regardless of whether, the Father Lord joke from earlier or not joke, whatever it was a setup that they didn't pay off or not. The thing I needed them to pay off, just heading into these episodes, was that.
Completely.
And getting it was very important.
You mentioned there, to let you speak while I get a jumper because I'm suddenly freezing. You mentioned Azula there. Now, I think the more interesting stuff for Azula is obviously in the next two.
Yes, correct.
So we probably won't talk about it that much. But what were your thoughts in these two? of what they did or were beginning to do with Azula.
Yeah, I think it's really clever. It's kind of clever chess piece moving, because it's like you do need to separate the gang a bit, because you can't just have everyone on the same battlefield at the end. It makes real sense to divide up the finale, because it gives it a sense of scale and place, and also one final battle in one very specific place for all the marbles doesn't feel very realistic. So setting up Azula as Fire Lord to give to give us another flag to topple, another goal to achieve in the final 2 episodes, is both smart from a practical chess piece moving way, but also a great way to set up what we then do with Azula character-wise. And it's obviously not a big part of these 2 episodes. Azula gets maybe 2 scenes in these entire 2 episodes, but they are the scenes that basically, one of which is the Fire Lord basically saying, "You're going to be Fire Lord now," which is, you can see the gleam in her eyes when he says that, like the look of like she wants to murder everyone. It's a terrifying thought. And then he announces himself Phoenix King. Dumbest title ever. What a loser. Everyone should have laughed and mocked him the minute he said that, and he should have just ran away in shame. But that whole bit, excuse the pun, because of the actor, but that whole bit is very hammy. Like, it felt it honestly, like, it briefly slipped into Power Rangers, to the point where when I was watching it this morning, Jess was next to me, and she's, in that scene, I'm like, oh, this isn't a reflection of what the show is. Like, this really feels like Saturday morning cartoons. This feels like what she thinks this show is, and it's not. Like, it was almost, and it's a very, personal, specific circumstance. But it was almost not embarrassing, but it was almost like, I was just like, oh, this isn't ideal. Like, so not a great reflection of what the show is.
No, not when he's like, I'm gonna take over everything. And I don't think, I'm not blaming Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill has had an incredible lot, has had a lot of nuance in his work in this show, and in his delivery and in his performance. The dialogue. There's only one way you deliver that dialogue. Like, Hamill made the right choice with the dialogue he was given. I don't think the dialogue he was given was the right choice.
Well, I think the note I wrote was, do the Ember Island players need a new cast member? Because Firelord's got a penchant for the theatrical, doesn't he? With his silly costume.
That didn't help either. Jess was like, because obviously, like, the costume gets put on, the flames appear, the flags fly down, and Jess just goes, "Oh, he just had that stuff ready, did he, for that moment?"
Yeah. I'm like, mate,
oh,
he's been prepping to be the Phoenix King for all of his life.
But he kind of has. Like, I was kind of like, well, yeah, like he's deliberately taken her there to give this speech. So actually, in this instance, yeah, he probably did prep, and it does make sense. And you do see a bit of Azula's journey. Like, they do definitely start it here. Like, she's telling the people pulling the carriage to hurry up, and you can see her beginning to go power
the way
mad
she goes
and stuff.
Yeah, and what's great about that is, like, it's as I said, it's like it's a good amalgam of, like, putting the chess pieces in place both for the plot and the character. Which it's not just a practical. Well, it is, but it's not just the practical, here's the goal for someone else to, because again, what I like about the finale, and what we'll talk about, I think, a lot next week, is maybe the chess piece moving of this, and the way they separate the teams and give them all goals that make sense for them to be doing. They everyone has something to be dealing with that gives us, essentially 3 or 4 finales happening at once, right?
Yes.
And that's why the finale is so epic. We could have just had everyone stand around Dragon Ball Z style and watch as Aang and the Fire Lord fight. We could have done that. I'm glad we didn't. Every character had something to do, and it felt really realistic that this final battle was fought on multiple fronts. And Azula, is a perfect thing for Zuko to deal with, because we've already established that the Fire Lord is Aang's problem. Zuko made that very clear earlier in the season, so Zuko needs something to be doing, and what a great thing to put him against his sister. So setting that up here, creating that problem of, because these two episodes do both things. They set up Azula as being given the status of Fire Lord, and they've got Zuko being told he's rightfully and should be the Fire Lord once the Phoenix King is toppled. So you basically just put those two on a collision path in these two episodes as well. So it does so much. It's very well done. It is very well done.
And you I just love as well that moment in terms of setting up the gang. What a brilliant swelling moment, but also comical moment when Sokka's like, we got air, earth, fire, water, shield and sword, and then the leaf flops down.
Yes.
Such a good moment.
Great. It's a great moment. There's so many great moments of comedy. One of my favorites is Boomy being like, wait a minute, someone's missing, someone very important. Where's Momo? So good.
And what's the bit where something else is, and then when it's Sokka's like, he's with Aang, and he's like, oh well, if the two of them together, I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, he says something like, at least they've got each other, or something like that. Yeah,
there's a bit as well with him that I can't remember the context of it, but someone's explaining something, and he randomly pops up into frame and is like, that's true, or something like that.
Yes.
I can't remember the context.
I always forget how mad Boomy is until he's on screen again. I go, this character is fucking insane. And by the way, I do love that he took back his own city during the eclipse. That's such a great thing, because one, it's a really badass. It's a badass moment. It's a great thing to see. I just really enjoyed it, because one of the big unresolved, like not unresolved, but like one of the big moments of defeat they had in this show was losing. Not Ba Sing Se, because that's the big one. What's his city called? Omashu. Losing Omashu was one of the first big defeats that our gang suffered across this series, and seeing that was resolved and that Boomy took that back during the eclipse is brilliant. I love it so much, and it also then tracks with what we learned in the meeting, that there'd been pockets of resistance and certain towns were fighting back. Yeah, Omashu was one of them, right? And Boomy was led the front on that and took advantage of the eclipse. So I love that, but I also love that we get that scene and then Boomy says, do you guys do anything interesting during the eclipse? They're like, no, not really.
It's just like, no.
So good. It's so good how it all ties together. I love it.
The whole thing with the Boomy thing, though, it did make me go, like, because obviously I've only seen this show once. I was like, God, is that really where we left him? Like, captured in a box? Like, I couldn't remember the context of that at all.
Yeah, so if you, because it's funny, because he even requotes the line, because when Aang tries to free him in that episode as they're escaping Omashu, he's teaching Aang a lesson, and he says he's going to just sit there and wait for the right moment. Aang should wait for the right moment to strike with the Fire Lord or something like that. And he'll know when it comes, is kind of what Boomy's trying to teach Aang. So Boomy just stays there basically to teach Aang a lesson. And so they didn't go back on that. When the eclipse happens, Boomy goes, it's the right moment in this episode. Like a callback to that, which is like insane, because that's like 2 seasons earlier. So like the casual viewer is not remembering that was where we left Boomy.
and that scene is like, isn't it amazing? And this is almost a comment for the next episode, because obviously the next episode has Iron Man earthed off. But isn't it incredible?
I love it so much.
That this show, because it applies to Boomy's escape as well, is still coming up with new things to do with bending and new ways to use bending to fight. Like the way he escapes and then takes back over and stuff is just fantastic. And like, it's just like, oh wow, like you've not even begun to repeat stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's like the creativity involved in this show is always astounding to me, and I'm, I don't think I'm overselling it here. That continues through Korra. They keep finding new and interesting ways to do things with bending, and I'd say it's not maybe as frequent in Korra because obviously you have at this point like we've tackled a lot of the most like obvious things you can do. So in Korra they have to start thinking, even more creatively. But like it still carries through into that idea that like there's always new things you can think of doing with the bending. So we'll get to that at some point. But yeah, the old masters in general, you were happy? Did you like the Master Paku returns? But now he's married Gran, and he calls him Grand Paku. That whole thing.
I like that. I'll be honest. He's the one I couldn't really remember who he was. I knew Sokka's master. I knew Boomy. Him. I was like, okay, yeah. I assume we've met him.
So he was the guy at the Northern Water Tribe that wouldn't let Katara learn because women were taught healing, not waterbending. So he was Katara and Aang's first waterbending master from the end of the first season, which for us was a long time ago now. The reveal in the end. I think he's on our Dickhead of the Week like Hall of Fame list. I think to be honest with you. Yeah, Master Paku on Knobhead Hall of Fame for being a misogynist. For being a misogynist. In the end, like that's the reference to the betrothal necklace. So to call back season 1's finale, Katara has that necklace she always wears that her gran gave to her. It turns out that's a betrothal necklace he made for her before they were separated. So the premise in this episode is that he went back to the Southern Water Tribe and reunited with their grandmother and that they've married. And he even says, I made her a new betrothal necklace. So that was nice.
And presumably went, by the way, your grandkids are all right.
Yeah, I assume. Yeah. I met them. They were all right. They were learning waterbending with the Avatar. What? I don't know. Sokka got a girlfriend, but she turned into the moon. That's the update. That's where they're up to.
Another thing we don't have time for in the finale.
Is going back to where we started. Yeah.
But if it was, I feel like if this episode was 10 minutes longer, that 10 minutes would have been a montage of them going back to grandparents, Toph going back to her mum and dad, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So the group of old masters we meet, obviously we meet Iroh, but we also have Master Paku, who we just talked about, Zhong, who was Aang's the deserter that first tried to teach Aang firebending and it went horribly wrong. Pian Dao, who taught Sokka how to sword fight, and obviously Boomy, who was more interested in where Momo was than anything else. It was great to see all those guys come back. And also, what I like about that is, we've got in that group we have a Fire Nation person. We have an earthbender. We have a waterbender. I'm trying to think. Is Pian Dao an earthbender?
Yeah.
Boomy's an earthbender.
Yeah. Well, I don't. There is an earthbender. I don't know if it's the right character name. And we've got.
Boomy is an earthbender, isn't he? So wait a second. What are we missing? Well, air because Aang is the last airbender.
Aang's the last. Yeah.
Gotcha.
We've got.
I was just doing the math there. I was thinking, well, there's definitely one we're missing because we're doubling up on people from the Earth Kingdom. Anyway,
the clue's in the title, if I'm honest, Dan.
Yeah.
And obviously we've got 2 firebenders because we've got the guy who refused to teach him and Iroh.
Yes, and we've got to. Technically, potentially, I don't know if Pian Dao can earthbend or if he's just a sword guy. So I'd have to. I can't remember. I don't think he can earthbend.
No, I don't think. I thought he was just a sword guy.
So which means Boomy is our earthbender. So there you go. We've doubled up on. We've doubled up on firebenders. Okay. Right.
Which is great, isn't it? Like the notion that the resistance, the masters of the resistant, it's outweighed by firebenders.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point actually. That's the resistance has 2 firebenders sort of leading the way. That's a really good point. Another good way that this show reinforces its core theme that the people aren't the decisions of their leaders.
It's not all bad, folks.
Yeah. So a couple of other notes then, if you don't mind, Chris, before we get into the triv. So
you better be able to spin one of these to Doctor Who, Dan.
Oh damn! Shit. Yeah. Well, we've still got next week for Doctor Who if I don't manage it, but I'm going to try. I promise I'll try. One thing I thought about when we watched this and I made a note about was I feel like somebody could validly tell me that it doesn't make a huge amount of sense that Zuko didn't mention the timer on their plan was maybe a bit more urgent than they were acting. Like, it does seem weird that 3 days before the eclipse is when Zuko finally goes, oh no, I was at a war meeting, and they're going to absolutely destroy everything during the eclipse. I could see somebody making that debate. I don't personally agree with it, because I think they do just enough for Zuko to be like, well, I thought that was the plan, was to beat the Fire Lord before the eclipse, so it didn't seem important what his specific plan was. I assumed you knew he was up to something. And I think that's enough for me. I don't know, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it makes sense. I liked that we got to see the what actually happened in that war meeting as well, and that it ties in so nicely to this finale, because obviously in the episode in question, I didn't find myself going, ooh, what was in the war meeting? But it's cool that they've tied it so neatly into the finale, and also Zuko's final decision to, Zuko's final decision to turn on the Fire Nation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it, and his thing where he says, the earthbending people will always have hope is just really sweet, and I love how like Chief Fire Dude or whatever I called him, was it Fire Dude? Chief Fire Dude?
Yeah, I think it was Chief Fire Dude or Boss Fire Dude or something like that.
Or maybe it was Uncle Fire Dude was the one you wanted to hear. Anyway, I love that he just gets completely the wrong interpretation of what Zuko said.
Or he understood exactly, but he just wanted he was just fucking with him.
Yeah, like, you're right, we do have to destroy that hope. Like,
He's like, this will test his mettle. I'm going to wind him up here. So yeah, I thought that was very good. I loved that when they were missing Aang, they turned to their resident Avatar hunter to help find him. They were like, Zuko, come on, man. This is like your one skill. Finding Aang.
So what do we think all that meant then? Like, the turtle's got an aura which blocks sense getting out?
The turtles are pretty mystical. I think they exist on a plane halfway between the spirit world and our world.
That's a good interpretation.
I think that you can... So I think the spirit world and our world overlap, right? So they're the same. So if you're in one place in the spirit world, that place exists technically in the sort of physical world, but they overlay, right? So the turtle is in both at once. So if you go to the same spot in the spirit world, and you can see the turtle, and then in that same spot in the physical world, you can also see the turtle. I think they sort of exist between the two. And if you're on the turtle's back, you're between the two planes. And I think that means you're undetectable.
Nice. I like that explanation.
Yeah, I think I'm borrowing a little bit of knowledge from Korra to sort of fill in the gaps to make that function. I think a tiny bit, but nothing major. I think you could draw that conclusion from this just with what we've got, regardless of that. But I think it makes even more sense knowing what I know from Korra. So yeah, I think that's my interpretation of it. But yeah, I thought it was nice actually. We haven't talked about that. We visit June again. We haven't seen June. Real badass. And her weird smelly nose monster, her weird anteater creature thing. Again, that's nice just to see old characters popping back up, I guess.
Yeah, that was a real logical one, and I like the conclusion on that as well. Like, it was a really neat way of getting to Iroh, I thought.
Yeah, it was a great way of getting to Iroh, and a great way of stopping them from doing. Because otherwise, they wouldn't do anything else. They'd spend the finale searching for Aang, and we need to get them on their own journeys, and we need them to know wherever Aang is, you're not going to find him. So stop thinking about that and start thinking about what you need to be doing.
Yeah, start thinking about your own role. Step up, people.
Yeah. But I think the show needs that from them, right? Like, just structurally. Like, they need to... Because otherwise, if they never got confirmation Aang was somewhere they can't reach him, you'd be going, why are you giving up on searching for Aang? it doesn't make you'd keep searching. He's the Avatar. You definitely need that piece of the puzzle. But finding out categorically, you're wasting your time even trying to look for him. Just nulls that, and you go, okay, great. Now we don't have to worry about that anymore. I don't have to think about why aren't the gang looking for Aang. I just go, well, now they have to think about what can they do instead, which is exactly what we need them, just from a character perspective. So June's both a great way to get them to Iroh, in a way that you go, oh, okay, that now we know how. It's an easy way that you go. That's a great easy way for them to just sort of find him. Although one quick slight nitpick, Chris. Don't know if you've noticed, Chris, how fast they can travel the world on Appa now. Like, it took them the whole first season to get across this map.
There was a line where whatever the creature is they end up on after they leave the old masters, and they literally have to put a really clunky piece of exposition where they're like, this creature is the fastest creature in the world. And I'm like, come on now. Like, because they clearly realised, like, no, we want them to do some journeys that literally we spent a season doing.
That's the thing is, because it's like, so is this just a testament to how quick they could have gotten everywhere if they hadn't kept stopping to dick about? Like, it was weeks and weeks and weeks they spent travelling from one end to the other. Just straight. We're in the Fire Nation. I guess we'll just head into the Earth Kingdom for a bit quick trip and then back to the Fire Nation, I guess. Probably do that before lunch, right? Love it.
It was bad.
It's fine. It's fine. You get away with it. It's not a problem.
You don't care, but it is funny if you stop and think about it.
Yeah. They could almost have saved that joke from the Ember Island players when they go over the Great Divide on their way to the Earth Kingdom and are like, should we stop here and do an adventure? No, definitely not. Keep going.
It's like the other day. I can't remember. I don't want to give us the credit because I can't remember if it was this, but we recently rewatched Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. And I finished The Dark Knight Rises, and I really wanted to
bad movie.
I wanted to do that thing where you go to reviews of it and you see what other people think, and I just couldn't. It's an old movie, so it's just it wasn't on YouTube. I couldn't. It's not like the people I would go to have reviewed it. So I was like, I couldn't even really find Kevin Smith talking about it, and I'm sure he did, but I'd have to really deep dive into the archive. So I was like, it's so sad. I was going for a walk the other day, and I thought, well, I know people who definitely did talk about it. So I listened to episode 7 of Nothing But Static, which is called The Critical Bat Rises. And I listened to us discuss it, and I can't remember if we said it or it was on something else, like the extract of Kevin Smith or something else. But someone points out that those policemen are all trapped underground for months, and they come out clean shaven.
Yes, they do.
How were they shaving, and why? Why were they shaving? It's just like that. Just reminded me of that.
Yeah, the other one. I think I have a review on YouTube of Dark Knight Rises.
What you know of a review on it?
No, I made one.
Oh, did you?
No, I made a review where I did. It was me the night I saw it, being like, it was all right, I guess. Me a few weeks later going, I've thought about it and it wasn't, and we have a conversation with myself.
Oh, right. I didn't. Is that definitely on YouTube? I did. Well, I don't. But then again, I don't think we've got the hits to come up that quickly in the algorithm, Dan. Even though I subscribe to Nothing But Static.
No, I just thought you might remember that I, worked really hard on this review and then no one watched it.
I don't remember that coming up on the podcast, even though. But then again, I don't think I've.
No, I don't think. I think we recorded the podcast before I did the video.
Right. Okay. No, I didn't. I apologize. Sorry, I didn't.
Very upsetting. No, it's fine. I was joking, but yeah, I did do a video where it was myself. It was the idea was it was me the night I saw it, feeling like it was okay, having a conversation with me from a few weeks later when I'd put any amount of thought into the movie and realized it just falls apart immediately.
There is it's funny listening back to our audio quality is so bad that it makes us sound like we've got different accents.
Yep.
What's this weird twang we've got in our voices? And 2, there's no bits, like we go straight into it, and there's sort of no bits. But the closest to a little bit, which I really enjoyed, was this moment where you go, right, I'm rolling up my sleeves, and I'm like, what, literally? Like, you don't wear a lot of shirts, and you're like, oh, I've just come from work, I'm in a work shirt, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so you're like, so I'm literally rolling up my sleeves. So I go, well, in that case, Dan, I'm gonna roll up my dressing gown. That's right, I'm in a dressing gown. And then you go, I don't know what to say to that. And I just go, well, why don't you tell us what you didn't like about The Dark Knight Rises? It just made me laugh. Efficient. Anyway, back to I don't know, whatever we were talking about. The fact that there's just suddenly this creature where they have to really clunkily go, it can fly faster than anything. That's why timing, yeah.
I have a small moment of pride here, Chris, on my next note. I wrote down the song in the bar when they go find June is the same song from when Aang held his illegal dance party in the sort of Footloose episode.
Oh, that's
cool. And then I wrote, but that'll probably be in the trivia. Sad face. And I did a little sad face in my note. And then I got to the trivia, Chris. Wasn't in there. Boom! It's something that wasn't in the trivia. Get it added, Avatar Wiki.
Is it definitely the same song?
Yeah, 100%. It's the same song.
Cool. 100%. I like that because that implies that sort of spirit and rebellion is sort of stretched out a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Hadn't thought of it that way. But yeah, because the music is the same music. So yeah, they've done the No, I like that too. You found an even better reason for that to be. I just thought they were like, we need a piece of music to be playing in the bar in the background. God, music's expensive, and we spent a lot of money on the animation in the next 2 episodes. Do we have a piece of music we've only used like once, maybe twice before that we could just sort of stick on here? I like that you've actually made it like a genuine story reason, whereas I was just thinking they were saving money.
Which could have been it. Like, it very much could have been that.
I like your version better, to be honest with you, Chris. So it was nice for them to bring June back. Did you remember June? June's she's a 1 episode character, I think, maybe 2. She's not in it a lot.
No, I did remember June. No, I liked that a lot. I did remember June, and I was like, oh, cool. That's really cool to see her again.
Agreed. Did you enjoy that Sokka immediately was like, look, Aang mysteriously disappearing before an important battle, spirit stuff. That was like Sokka's first answer.
But I did also like Zuko going, but that means the body would be here. And he was like, oh. I enjoyed all of that. Like you say, there's a lot of great comedy in this first part.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I wrote down, but we didn't talk about when we talked about it. So in the Zuko Iroh sort of reunion, Iroh says, "I was never angry. I was afraid you'd lost your way." I just wanted to. I love that line so much. Just wanted to make sure I said it out loud. And then
that's a really beautiful line.
One of my final notes was Iroh is an absolute hero, setting up our finale and telling everyone what their destiny is.
I didn't even view it that expositionally when I watched it, but maybe if I rewatched it, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, no, it is."
He literally he turns to Zuko, tells him Zero. I just merged the 2 characters in a sort of Dragon Ball Z fusion. Iroh and Zuko become Zuro. Anyway, oh god, I've thrown myself for that. He turns to Zuko and he's like, "You must become Fire Lord. You must go back to the Fire Nation for when Aang defeats the Fire Lord." And then he turns to like. I think it's Sokka and Toph and Suki, and he's just like, "What will you do?" And they're like, "Oh, we should take out the Fire Nation." Well, he's like, "Yes, you should." And then that's a good destiny or whatever. And Katara's like, "I'll go with Zuko." And it's like they figure it out, but it's like Iroh just basically tells them all where they need to be for the finale.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's great.
That's fair.
The only person who doesn't have that is Aang, who obviously has. I mean, we should talk about how epic the visuals are of Aang, because we talked a lot about the Lion Turtle from a story perspective and as a story mechanic, but just visually, holy shit, right? Like when you realize the island is moving and Aang floats around to the front, you're thinking, "What was this?" But when he stands on its like arm and then its head is there, and it's this shot where Aang is so tiny in the shot. He's you realize the scale of this thing, and it's just incredible, just as a visual. It looks like an old oil painting, from God knows what. It's beautiful. It's so good to look at, and I like that it talks without moving its mouth, because that would ruin that effect somehow. It's kind of almost talking psychically. I love it. I love it so much. It's just perfect. If you want to create a big mystical lion turtle creature, yes, please. Like this.
Just visually in general, these 2 episodes are absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's clear. I didn't want to say this at the time, but I can say it now. You've seen the whole thing. The Ember Island players, for those who want to criticize them doing a recap episode prior to the finale, let's be honest, they were saving money for this. Ember Island players
that's
is
very fair.
Super low energy, low effort visually, so they could put all the resources and all of the time and really detailed animations and beautiful art design all went into these last few episodes. And that is correct. If you have a finite amount of resources, this is where you put them. So I don't want to hear anyone bitching about the Ember Island players, because it's a great episode considering that restraint. So shut your mouths.
Whilst it was quite a controversial episode, similar to how in Series 4, the finale, they clearly had of Doctor Who, they clearly had the money there because they did Midnight, which didn't require much money.
He's done it, everyone. I'm so proud. And
Midnight is an amazing episode as well.
I'm so proud of you.
But Midnight did literally come from Russell T Davies. I think he wasn't keen on a script or felt there were issues with the script, so they needed a script. They needed it to be low budget. So he was like, all right, I'm going to put the Doctor on a train and not have any effects. Okay, cool.
He wrote it in a weekend.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, incredible. It's a great episode, Doctor Who. Anyway, so there you go. You did it. We did it. Let's. Should we? Oh yeah, we should talk about the way this episode ends. By the way, I just think the timing. Everyone figures out where they're going to go. Aang gets the information from the lion turtle, and then he goes, and the lion turtle even tells him he'll come to you. And Aang stands on the lion turtle literally took Aang to where he needed to go to meet his destiny. Where the lion turtle meets the land again, and Aang can get off, is where the Fire Lord is approaching. And that's brilliant. And then Aang turns around, and from behind him, you see the comet.
It's amazing. It's stunning.
Because it's so stupid, but it's so necessary. It's like he's going to have to fight him when he's at his most powerful, when Aang is at his most disadvantaged in comparison to him. And that's just a great way to set up a finale.
Yeah, I agree. It's wonderful. These 2 episodes, the whole thing is fantastic. And these 2 episodes in particular are a great starter.
Agreed. Should we do some trivia, Chris?
We get the main. Yep, let's trivia it up.
I'm going to give you some trivia. Put a little pause in that time, Chris, for a
I imagined you pointing when you said that. It just felt like you sort of... I imagine you moving your whole body.
I literally lifted both my hands up and then pointed at the mic from both sides. I gave it the finger guns, even though no one could see it.
Dad thinks this is a video podcast.
Yeah. Wait, it's not?
Well, I am always
but I always dress in a full suit.
I am secretly filming you, but that's just standard.
Well, the suit looks good.
Yeah, man, it looks great. I don't know why you're not wearing trousers, but top half, spectacular.
Right, yeah, well, I thought it was a webcam thing, didn't I? I thought I'd get away with it. I don't think you had to. I don't think you needed to tell everyone that, but
Sorry, mate. Sorry.
More friction between the Nothing But Static boys. It's been an episode for anyone
wondering. For anyone wondering, I'd say surprisingly girthy.
All the things you could have said then. I feel like you had that joke immediately and waited for me to peter out a bit so you could just lay it neatly.
I wasn't waiting for you to peter out. I was debating whether to say it. That's what you could hear. You could hear me going,
Can I make that joke? The answer is yes, you absolutely can. Well, and you should, and I'd have been annoyed if you didn't.
There's only one episode left. Fuck it.
get ourselves cancelled now, shall we? Anyway, so the chanting. I'll tell you when. There's two bits of trivia. The trivia is literally in the order of the episodes. So we're going to start with the trivia for the first part, the Phoenix King, and I'll let you know when the trivia is switching to the Old Masters. There's not a huge amount, but there's a little bit of trivia, Chris. We're going to give you some trivia.
A little bit trivia.
Let's do it. So the chanting that can be heard when the island/lion turtle sort of calls to Aang, causing him to sort of sleepwalk to him, is apparently a Buddhist chant. Na mo a mi tao fo. Although, according to this, spellings vary. Fair enough. And it can apparently also be heard during the Winter Solstice Part 2 when Zhao and his soldiers are about to attack Aang, and also in the Siege of the North Part 2 when Aang goes into the Avatar state and walks into the pond. So that's cool. So Sokka's terrible sense of aesthetics is once again shown. Now, we've had a few things where Sokka has tried to draw a thing or create a thing, and it's looked awful. Like when he did his Sokka's Master episode, he did a painting and it was tragic. And he tried to draw Appa when Appa was missing in the previous season. It was just an insane image. So it's a regular recurring thing. So that's the sculpture of Suki sort of backs up our previous and the idea that Sokka is not the most artistic of the group. I think it's fair.
But Suki's reaction to that was very sweet.
Yes, it was. That's very good. During the bar scene, Dune. Is it? Her name's Dune now. 2001 hit movie Dune is seen fighting a man who she throws into a table. He bears a striking resemblance to Ryu, the protagonist of the Street Fighter game series. He's also the same character model that she's seen arm wrestling in Bato of the Water Tribe. So they didn't even bother to have her fighting a different person. It's just the same guy she always fights with, I guess. I really enjoyed that.
It works. If it ain't broke.
Yeah, and this would have been a great place to insert the brilliant trivia. Get on it, guys. That the music playing in the background is the same piece of music from what episode is it? It's the headband episode. There you go. Though everyone else
very well observed, Dan.
What's that saying?
I just said very well observed.
I was really pleased, and then really sad when I realised I'm definitely not the first person who've noticed that, and it'll be in the trivia. And then when I got to the trivia and it wasn't there, I did a little fist pump.
Is that the first episode, though? Isn't that the second episode? We've not switched. Yeah.
No, first episode. They go to see June. They go to see June because hit 2001 movie Dune is they go to see her at the end of episode 1.
All right. Cool.
Of this 4-part finale. This episode has the longest recap in the entire history of the show due to the fact that it's the first part of the series finale. Viewers need to be reminded of the many plot points that are to be resolved during the 4-part series finale. But in go on, sorry.
I don't think we really needed the recap of Azu. Like it's relevant, but not so overtly relevant. The recap included things like Ty Lee and May taking out Azula, and that's relevant to where the character is, but they don't come back or interact with her. So some elements of it I don't think were needed in the recap.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there are definitely some extraneous things in the recap for sure, but it is a really long one, and also I think even the version that's on Netflix now, because it mentions here that since then some versions have received some releases have received a shortened previously on, so I think this might be the shortened one that's on Netflix. Wow. Which is pretty bad. So yeah, though everyone else in the first episode wears their season 3 outfit, Toph and Sokka switch into their season 2 outfits. And also there's a random part apparently when Toph is searching for Aang with Zuko where she suddenly wears her season 3 outfit briefly and then switches back. And apparently Katara switches back and forth between season 3, both of her season 3 outfits throughout the episode. I don't know why they chose to do that. Just, yeah, they did.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I guess it makes Katara. It makes sense because her season 3 outfit is her hiding in the Fire Nation outfit, and there's when they're back hiding on Ember Island, she could probably wear whatever she'd like. So it's water tribe garb, but when they go off to look for Aang around the Fire Nation, back into Fire Nation garb, which is a season 3 outfit. So yeah,
makes sense.
Makes all the sense.
And then it's nice. Does that mean then, like, I suppose it'll be next week? Do they switch to like season 2 outfits for the fights then?
I think so. Except with the exception of Aang, who gained a new outfit this year right before the eclipse that he's worn throughout the rest of the season and wears through the finale. We will talk about the designs later, because I think Aang's outfit that he wears the second half of the season and that he fights the Fire in is an absolutely badass look, especially when in the final episode he's got all the different things swirling around him and stuff. It just looks so cool. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, it looks awesome, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah. The order in which Sokka mentions all the elements when he does his little, we've got, earth, water, fire, when he goes through all the, like, the elements, he actually mentions them in the order of the Avatar cycle, which I think is really fun, that he's sort of subconsciously done that, even if he didn't mean to. He may have meant to, but yeah, there you go.
How different is it to the elements mentioned in Captain Planet?
Let's find
What's
out.
that order? Let's have a little look.
Captain
Planet, he's a hero.
Lyrics.
Gonna take pollution down
to zero. Yeah. Captain.
What a show.
So, Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, Heart. So, is that correct? No. Ooh, wait. Shit, that might be right. Dude, I think it's right.
What, is it in the same order?
So, Kyoshi, Earth, Roku, Fire, Wind, it's air, that's Aang, Water, Korra.
That's amazing.
What are the odds?
I mean, I feel like that's probably someone would have said if that was a reference, if that was deliberate.
Maybe
there's
some
not a
reference. Isn't just what are the odds of that though?
Maybe it's maybe there's some sort of elements thing which has them. They've both got the order from
right. Like there's some like Buddhist view that flows them in that order or something like that. Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah.
Comment below if you have the answer, and maybe we'll talk about it when we get around to Korra. But that is so the Captain Planet theme song also lists the elements in the correct order, potentially proving that that's very easy to do accidentally, and that the whole trivia we just read about Sokka doing that might have been a pure accident. But anyway,
there's 6 seasons of Captain Planet, so that's going to take us quite a while to get through them on that podcast.
Yeah, on Watching Planet. And I will say as well, when we do that, we're going to at some point get to the episode where Captain Planet fights Hitler. And let's be honest, we all want to watch that again.
It'd be so depressing though, wouldn't it? Because that'd just be every week. It would just be us going, yeah, so they go some way to trying to solve the climate change issues in this episode. Shame that hasn't happened in real life, though, isn't it?
Captain Planet would be the most depressing watch now because it's so bloody old and like nothing has changed. It's insane.
Exactly.
Anyway, I do love that show though. It's a fun. Except jokes aside, it's a fun. That was a fun show. I remember enjoying that as a kid.
I don't bring Captain Planet up enough on the list of shows I was obsessed with because as like a kid, I absolutely was obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I think it might be the show.
Go
on. No, I can't. I'm trying to think whether it was this show. Whether it's Captain Planet or whether it was another show, where there'd be a show where every day my dad would pick me up from school and I'd go, I think it was Captain Planet. And I'd go, have I missed Captain Planet? And Dad would go, no. Like, it's not, like, I pick you up at 3, it's on at 4, calm down.
That was me with Dragon Ball Z, basically. I'd finish school at like 3:30 and Dragon Ball Z was on at 4, and it was just like, it was like a 35-minute journey home on foot. So I would like try to like power walk my way home so I could make sure I didn't miss the first few minutes of Dragon Ball.
It wasn't, I've just realised it wasn't Captain Planet, it was Plastic Man.
Yes, Plastic Man. I remember you saying you enjoyed that. You've said that on a previous podcast. Do you remember the moment when Captain Planet meets Hitler?
No, I don't remember that, no.
he meets Hitler, and it's Hitler pre-becoming Hitler. I can't remember why. I don't know if they time travel or something, but he meets Hitler, and it's pre-Hitler rising to power, and Captain Planet just goes, "That man, I don't know what it is. I just sense something in him, something evil or something like that." It's ridiculous. It's like true evil or something like that. It's so absurd. It's like, yeah. Anyway.
I love that if you Google Captain Planet Hitler, the first entry is villains fandom, and it just says Adolf Hitler brackets Captain Planet. Fucking hell.
It's brilliant. It's a great moment. Anyway, so
he's got
final...
like a handlebar mustache.
Yeah, it's great. It's so silly. It's so silly. I love it. Oh, wow. So the last bit of trivia for the first episode is that the passage of power from Ozai to Azula over the Fire Nation is actually very similar to how emperors would manage their home nations when given the title as Holy Roman Emperor in the medieval era. At the time, the Holy Roman Emperor was considered the largest collection of power in the European sphere. So if you rose to that, someone would succeed you in your home nation. So it's very similar. So there you go. So the scenes featuring Aang in the second episode, we're on to the second episode now, is similar to a classic Hindu text. Now, I will mispronounce this, and I am very sorry, but the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the dialogue, in that story, Prince Arjuna prepares to engage in a major battle when he realizes that the opposing army is populated by many of his friends and relatives, and he then thus becomes conflicted about fighting. Despite being aware of their evil, in order to convince Arjuna to, the importance of taking part of the battle, Lord Krishna, who is an avatar of the god Vishnu, appears and counsels the prince about his duties as a member of the warrior caste and someone tasked with following a righteous path. The arguments that Krishna makes in favor of participating in the battle are very similar to the arguments that the previous avatars make to Aang, like Kuruk's advice that the consequences of inaction, and Kyoshi's advice alluding to a greater good outweighing the evil of taking life. So, I don't know if that's an intentional reference to that old text, but I'll be honest with you, probably, right? They seem to have taken a lot of influence from sort of other religions and cultures. It would not surprise me at all that they borrowed elements from that story, truthfully.
I think you've got to assume it is, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's enough of a history of them doing that to assume.
Yeah.
So Zuko and Iroh's reunion is similar to the parallel of the prodigal's son. A young man leaves his father and brother to pursue friendship with sinful people, similar to how Zuko betrays Iroh for Ozai and Azula. Ironically, Zuko's immediate family in this case. After all the son goes through, he soon learns he can go back to his father, and when he does return, he expects his father to severely reprimand him, only for the father to instantly welcome him back with open arms. So yeah, that is similar to the story of this prodigal son. Another potential borrow. That one I feel like it could more be a coincidence, but
yeah, I mean we've that versions of that redemption story have been done for decades and years. I think that's more of a. Do you know what I mean? That's more of some. Someone can't be like, no, that's nicked the hero's journey. Like, no, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, Prodigal Son to me is almost up there with Hero's Journey or, something like that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that's more likely to be not so much a coincidence, but like just like a general recurring theme in a lot of stories. So apparently Zuko and Iroh's reunion scene was storyboarded by supervising director Oh Sung-hyun, and he with the creators asking him specifically to come in and base the moment where the characters hug on a similar scene he animated for a Korean animated film called Wonderful Days. So they kind of brought him in to sort of recreate something they'd sort of seen in a previous thing he'd made. I think that's a fun idea. Nice to sort of homage his previous work in that moment. I've not seen Wonderful Days, but I'm going to assume that it's very good. Because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
This is the first and only episode in the series in which Iroh actually says Aang's name and doesn't just call him the Avatar. I didn't realize that was a thing, but it makes when I'm listening in my head, I'm going back and thinking about it and going, yeah, I don't think he ever does call Aang until now. So there you go.
Makes sense.
So I like the way they phrased this. The titular Sozin's Comet first appears at the end of this episode. The comet travels against the Earth's rotation, traveling from east to west, which is why the light from the comet was able to appear behind Aang's head in the episode, and why it is seen leaving in Sozin's Comet Part 4 across the sea opposite that direction, from which Ozai is approaching. So that's a nice attention to detail. It does there's a consistency to where the comet is in the sky and how it moves across the sky in the time it's coming through. And they thought about that and made sure that it made sense directionally, and I like that. Good work, animators.
Yeah, that's nice. Like you say, nice attention to detail.
100%. And then the final thing that I've got is the reveal that on Avatar Extras that the writers actually very deliberately put Momo with Aang just so he'd have someone to talk at. So yeah.
Nice.
That's why they put those two together. So there you go. That's the trivia. So how are we? I mean, well, obviously we'll do feelings on the whole show at the end of the next episode once we've reviewed the final 2 episodes. But I mean, overall thoughts on these two?
Yeah, they're great. They're brilliant. Great setup. We've done my nitpicks of the turtle, but great setup, great comedy, great tone, great pitch. I think. Oh, sorry, I hit the mic wire and smashed it into my face then, so apologies if that made a weird noise. I think the setup's great. I think the action's great. I think it spends time with characters I didn't expect it to, which was a very welcome surprise. I really liked it.
Excellent. Yeah. No, I would wholeheartedly co-sign that. I think that review.
Like I say, I think it's what you need as your starter. Given that the main is, episode 3 is essentially a battle, and I think you need your starter if you're going to do that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, if we're doing this as a sort of 3-act story, essentially, weirdly, I think another way you could divide this is actually have it as a 3-part finale movie, with the first part being, the episode before, if that makes sense. That sets up the Aang's gone missing thing. Yeah,
but I think that a lot of the action in part 2 comes from the flashbacks of Thingamajig escaping, and the Aang side of part 2 is literally quite static.
Yeah,
literally him sat talking to past lives. So I think it's cleaner 1, 2, and then 2.
Well, it's just because you usually don't open with a story with just an action scene, because you were correctly pointing out that episode 3 is just a big action beat, and I guess you could argue if you're doing the 3-act structure, setup, escalation, resolution, that's these 3 episodes.
And it's weird because I think there's an interesting discussion next week on whether we get enough of a dessert, and I'd argue, to tease, I think we probably do, is my instinctive reaction now, because it's almost like the main is so insane that for dessert you're like, oh, just give me a sweet drink, just give me a Baileys.
Can I just get a mint?
yeah, exactly. I'll take 1 after 8.
Yeah.
So that's my instinct. But we shall see whether we still feel that way after watching.
Yeah, no, agreed. Are we adding anyone to the Nobbed Hall of Fame this week? I don't think there's anyone deserves.
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay, cool. Right, let's wrap this up then. So thank you everyone for listening. As always, you can listen to the very next episode of this right now if you wish. Either way, whether you're on the because if you listen to this on the Patreon the week it comes out, if you're already a patron, you can't listen to the finale until next week. Be patient. But if you listen to this on YouTube or Spotify or iTunes, you can already go check this out. The sequel to this, the final of this, over on our Patreon for as little as $1 a month. You can join up, and that gives you access to the Discord where you can ask us dumb questions, which we always love. We love a good dumb question. The reaction to your condiments thing, by the way, Chris, has been surprisingly positive. I don't know what to say.
I only saw it because I didn't know it's not gone on YouTube yet, has it? It's gone.
No,
on the Discord,
I'm waiting for that. The patrons have it.
I only saw one thing on Patreon when I last saw it, which was that someone had said it was spectacular, but I didn't see if there was any.
Yeah,
other comments after that.
so Farzin says Chris's condiment list was glorious, and then Punkfish came in with I loved it. Might reply more detail later, which tells me that he's also got to put together a 50-odd condiment list. And I basically replied to that and said you shouldn't encourage him.
Because I loved that before that on that thread. There's messages of someone being like, can't wait for the condiments, and you being like, oh, you have no idea. But again,
yeah, trust me, you're
still
not prepared. You'll regret wanting that. yeah.
I still maintain I gave the people what they wanted, although as you say, the people in this instance are very much the people on the Discord. I'm not sure how everyone else is going to react.
I also feel like me reacting negatively is also kind of what the people wanted. I think I have to, in that scenario, I have to position myself as like very deeply annoyed that it's happening. Because otherwise it's just you listing your condiments, and I don't think that's necessarily like... That's its own kind of insane, but I feel like there has to be a counter to that of some sort. Otherwise, it's very long for that.
That's fair.
So yeah. Fair. Anyway, so yeah, if you wanna get on the Discord or the Patreon, it's as little as $1 a month gives you access to that, and it'll be the same for when Rewind Reviews kicks back in. You'll be getting episodes of that a week early too, and then obviously when we get to Korra, same thing, and it helps us to support us. We've slightly dipped below breaking even again, so I'm gonna push that until someone else joins and helps us out. But yeah, no, it's we do love the support we get from that, and obviously if you can do that or you can't and don't. In that case, we don't. It's not. It's a very casual thing. We like it when people do it because it helps us out, and makes this hobby less of a cost to us. But we're happy to keep doing this and supplying all the content for free. So it's not. No one should feel compelled to do that if they can't afford it. I always borrow the thing that the Weekly Planet guys say, which is whatever amount would fall out of your pocket and you wouldn't notice is the amount you should feel comfortable giving, and not a penny more. And that's only if you want to. Because you could also keep whatever that amount is for yourself and buy an ice cream or something. Do that, actually.
Oh. Yeah, forget it. Yeah.
Go buy an ice cream. That's way better. Why would you?
Buy an ice cream. Buy an ice cream, pop it in the fridge, wait a week, and then just listen to it.
Yeah. Buy an ice cream and then wait a week and listen to the podcast. Yeah.
Can I say... Jess said yesterday, she said, I really need another podcast to listen to. And I was like, why don't you listen to Rewind Reviews? And she was like, no, I get enough of you and down on Nothing But Static. I was like, all right, fine. No, literally discuss some of your favourite films. Nah.
She's fair. She's right. It's too much. We do too much content, Chris. I'm sick of me, and I'm me. Other ways in which you can reach us, youtube.com/nothingbutstaticuk if you want to like and subscribe and all that stuff. That helps us out too. On any of the audio platforms you listen to this on, it is reviewable. So iTunes and Spotify and Amazon and all those. So please do, poke like, star, heart, whatever review system each one of those has, interact with that. That helps us out too. Or you could just keep listening. We appreciate that too. Anyone who's doing that, which is you, if you're hearing this, we love you for that. Just keep doing that as well. If you don't want to support us in a more active way, you're already doing enough by putting up with us. So yeah, thank you so much. Obviously, the great Raphodraws.
Rapho.
There you go. I thought I'd leave a pause to see what you did there, and you didn't disappoint. So that's Instagram.com/Raphodraws, spelled RAPHO. And then just draws, like the word draws, as in draws something, who supplies us with the great piece of art that is the key art for this podcast, which is the sort of apple at sunset. It's beautiful. It's great. Sunrise or sunset? I've never known. I think I've interchanged the two as I've talked about that art over the years we've done this podcast. It's great. Its art's so good that I doubt I'll change it when we get to Korra.
That's fair.
It's so good. Why would I bother? But Rapho's done a bunch of great art that you can get on the Instagram. And also, there's a Redbubble account and a few other things. You can go to launchlinks.io/u/Raphodraws to get access to like the Tumblr, the Twitter, the YouTube. But Rapho's got a bunch of social media presence that has all sorts of great and awesome art on it. Go support in any way you can, even if it's just a follow. That's send some love Rapho's way. They were very nice about letting us use that art for this. I think, is that everything?
I think so. It feels like that's everything.
mail at Nothing But Static if you've got any thoughts that you want to pass on. Or head over to the YouTube channel and put it in the comments. Twitter,
Absolutely.
at Dan Doolan, at C Billingham for Chris, with 2 M's. Yeah, okay, now that is everything, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
So
so
got that, Dan?
I'm very excited. What are you... I was going to say what you're thinking for the next 2 episodes, but you've seen the next 2 episodes. That'd be a dumb thing to ask. This would be the point I ask you to speculate, and you don't...
I could make some very exact predictions if you'd like.
Yeah, no, I'm good. So we'll call it there. Thanks, everyone, so much for listening. I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you in a week's time when we sit down to review Sozin's Comet Part 3, Into the Inferno, and Sozin's Comet Part 4, Avatar Aang.